You thought you finally found someone who understood you, but one day you realized the person you trusted was never real. For years, you gave yourself to this person. You shared your secrets, your fears, your dreams. You convinced yourself that this was the one person who truly saw you, the one who could finally meet you in the places where you had always felt unseen. They seemed to care in a way others never did. They listened. They mirrored back your emotions with uncanny accuracy. They gave you the sense of safety you had been searching for your entire life. But then, slowly, something began to feel off. Small contradictions appeared. Their kindness seemed conditional. Their empathy evaporated in moments when you needed it most. You started to notice how much of yourself you were giving up to keep them happy, how much silence you endured to avoid conflict, how much of your own truth you swallowed just to preserve the fragile peace. And then it happens. The mask slips. In one sharp, unforgettable moment, you see them for who they are. The charm no longer blinds you. The excuses no longer protect them. What you see is not love, not care, not partnership, but manipulation, exploitation, and a hunger that was never satisfied no matter how much you gave. That moment is devastating, because it doesn't just destroy your trust in them, it collapses something inside of you. It tears down the illusion you had been living in, the belief that love, if you just worked hard enough, could finally heal your loneliness, your past wounds, your need to be understood. This realization hits at the deepest level. The person you trusted never actually existed. You weren't loved, you were used. It is more than heartbreak. It feels like psychological annihilation. You begin to question everything. Was any of it real? Did they ever care about me? Was I just a fool all along? The empath's greatest strength, the ability to see into others, to understand their pain, to give unconditional love, becomes their greatest vulnerability when they meet the narcissist. Because the narcissist is not meeting you with authenticity. They are meeting you with a mask, carefully crafted to reflect what you want to see. When the mask falls, what's revealed is not just their true face. It's the crushing realization that the entire relationship was built on an illusion. Psychologists call this moment the shattering of the idealized image. It's the collapse of the false reality the narcissist created to draw you in. And for the empath, this collapse is far more painful than an ordinary breakup, because it doesn't just end a relationship, it ends a story you built your identity around. You thought you were building intimacy. You thought you were finally safe. In reality, you were living in a carefully constructed illusion designed to feed the narcissist's need for validation, control, and power. That's why the pain feels so different. It's not just loss, it's betrayal at the most intimate level. It's the destruction of trust not only in the narcissist, but in your own judgment, your own perception, your own ability to know what is real. This moment is where many empaths spiral into self-doubt. You replay every detail. You wonder how you missed the signs. You punish yourself for believing too easily, for loving too deeply, for ignoring the red flags. But here's the truth. You didn't fail. You weren't blind. You simply trusted in good faith, and the person you trusted was wearing a mask designed to exploit exactly that. Narcissists are experts at hiding their true nature, at mirroring what you long to see. Anyone in your position would have been deceived. What matters is not that you fell into the illusion, but that you saw through it. That moment, as painful and destructive as it feels, is also the beginning of transformation. Because once you see the narcissist for who they really are, you cannot unsee it. You cannot return to the illusion. And that is the paradox of this pain. The very moment that feels like destruction is also the first moment of freedom. The shattering of illusion hurts because it feels like death. The death of the fantasy, the death of the person you thought you loved, the death of the false hope that someone else could complete you. But within that death lies the seed of something else, the possibility of rebuilding your life on truth, not illusion. But for now, though, The pain is raw. The shock is overwhelming. And it's okay if all you feel is grief, anger, and confusion. It means you've finally seen clearly. The empath's journey begins here, in the rubble of what once felt like love. The empath and the narcissist are not opposites. They are two wounds looking for each other. At first glance, it seems impossible. How could someone so deeply compassionate, so willing to give, end up entangled with someone so self-absorbed, so emotionally destructive? But beneath the surface, the attraction between an empath and a narcissist is not random. It's patterned. It's rooted in psychology, in childhood wounds, in unconscious dynamics that pull them together like magnets. For many empaths, the story begins in early life. They grew up in households where their emotional needs were ignored, minimized, or overshadowed by others. Maybe they had a parent who was volatile, self-centered, or emotionally unavailable. They learned early that love was conditional, that their value came from meeting other people's needs, not their own. Out of survival, they developed a heightened sensitivity to others' moods. They became experts at reading people, anticipating what others needed and adapting themselves to avoid rejection or conflict. This survival strategy is what makes them empaths, but it also leaves them vulnerable, because when they meet a narcissist, they encounter someone who unconsciously recognizes this sensitivity and exploits it. The narcissist, too, is carrying a wound. Behind the arrogance, the entitlement, and the grandiosity is often the childhood filled with its own kind of neglect, where vulnerability was shamed, where love was earned only through performance, where the true self was never safe to express. Narcissism becomes their armor, their mask. They survive by dominating, by controlling, by demanding admiration instead of risking genuine intimacy. So when the empath and the narcissist meet, something familiar ignites. The empath sees in the narcissist someone they can heal, someone they can finally prove their worth to by giving, fixing, and sacrificing. The narcissist sees in the empath a bottomless well of validation, someone who will bend, forgive, and keep giving without demanding real reciprocity. It feels like destiny, but in reality, it is two childhood wounds colliding, the wound of abandonment and the wound of shame, the longing to be seen and the fear of being seen. It's a dance of mirrors. The empath falls in love not with the narcissist's true self, but with the reflection of their own longing. And the narcissist attaches not to the empath as a person, but to the endless supply of attention and care they provide. This is why the relationship feels intoxicating at first. The empath feels chosen, valued, finally seen. The narcissist feels powerful, adored, fed. But beneath it all, neither person is truly being met for who they are. For the empath, realizing this is essential, because until they see the psychological machinery behind the attraction, they will keep blaming themselves. They will keep asking, "Why did I fall for this? What's wrong with me?" But the truth is, there's nothing wrong with being empathetic. What happened was that old wounds were replaying themselves, drawing them into a familiar but destructive cycle. Understanding this gives the empath something crucial: self-forgiveness. It wasn't weakness. It wasn't foolishness. It was psychology. It was the unfinished business of childhood resurfacing in adult form. And once you can see that clearly, the spell begins to break. Because awareness doesn't just explain the past, it changes the future. Once the empath understands why they were drawn to the narcissist, they gain the power to interrupt the pattern. They can begin to ask different questions. What in me was looking to be healed? What boundaries did I abandon to feel loved? What would it look like to give myself what I keep hoping others will provide? The truth is, empaths don't fall for narcissists because they are broken. They fall because they are human, carrying wounds that seek resolution. The narcissist provides the illusion of that resolution, but never the reality. And so the way forward begins with compassion, not for the narcissist, but for yourself. You weren't naive for loving. You weren't foolish for hoping. You were simply responding to the echo of your own unmet needs. Once you see that, the shame begins to lift. You can stop blaming yourself for being deceived. You can start to recognize that your sensitivity, your compassion, your ability to love deeply, these are not flaws. They are strengths. They only become dangerous when given to those who cannot and will not return them. Imagine giving your entire heart to someone, only to realize they were only ever reflecting your own light back at you. At first, it feels like magic. The narcissist looks at you with eyes that seem to understand everything. They finish your sentences. They echo your emotions. They reflect your dreams back to you as if they share them. You tell yourself you've never felt so deeply seen, so perfectly understood. But here's the truth. What you were seeing was not them. It was you, reflected back in their mirror. This is one of the most deceptive tools in a narcissist's arsenal: mirroring. In psychology, mirroring is a natural process. People subconsciously reflect each other's expressions, moods, and gestures to build connection. But narcissists weaponize it. They study you, they learn your vulnerabilities, they mimic your values, and they craft a version of themselves designed to fit your deepest desires. It's why the beginning of the relationship feels intoxicating. Every detail lines up: your favorite music, your worldview, your sense of humor. They seem to share it all. You think, finally, someone who gets me. But this isn't real intimacy. It's performance, and it works because as an empath, you are hungry to be met. You are longing for resonance. And when someone finally offers that, even if it's false, it feels like coming home. Eventually, though, the mask begins to slip. The reflection grows inconsistent. The same person who once seemed endlessly attentive suddenly becomes dismissive. The one who once mirrored your values now violates them without hesitation. The promises, the charm, the perfect match act, all of it starts to crack. And what lies beneath is shocking. Not the deep, empathetic soul you thought you'd found, but someone who cannot sustain connection once the performance no longer serves them. This is the cycle: idealization, devaluation, discard. At first, you are placed on a pedestal. You are adored, pursued, worshipped. But the moment you show that you are human, with needs, flaws, boundaries, the pedestal collapses. You are criticized, withdrawn from, punished, or ignored. It's not about who you are. It's about the narcissist's endless hunger for control and validation. They can only sustain the mask for so long before their real needs break through, to dominate, to diminish, to drain. For the empath, realizing this truth is devastating, but it's also clarifying. It means the love you thought you shared wasn't mutual. It means the intimacy you felt was a trick of the mirror, not a meeting of souls. And here's where the anger rises, because once you see the manipulation clearly, you recognize that your suffering wasn't random. It wasn't an accident. It was engineered. The very qualities that made you valuable, your kindness, your openness, your willingness to give, were turned against you. That realization is both enraging and awakening. It's the moment you stop gaslighting yourself. You stop saying, maybe I'm overreacting, maybe it's my fault, maybe I imagined it. No, you didn't imagine it. You were being mirrored, manipulated, and drained. And once you see that, you begin to reclaim your power. Because the mirror only works when you mistake it for truth. Once you recognize it for what it is, a mask, a performance, a reflection, it loses its hold on you. The empath's awakening begins here. It's painful, yes. It's filled with grief. But it's also the moment the fog begins to clear. Because you start to realize the love you were giving was real. The compassion, the loyalty, the depth, that was yours. It always came from you. The narcissist never truly gave you those things. They only borrowed your reflection long enough to keep you hooked. And that changes everything. Because if the love was always yours, then it can be yours again, this time given to someone worthy. Or better yet, given to yourself. For now, the pain is sharp, the anger is raw, but don't turn it inward. Let it awaken you. Let it remind you that you were not crazy, you were not imagining things, and you were not unworthy. The mask was never real. The mirror was never them. It was always you. You kept excusing, rationalizing, and forgiving. But deep down, you always knew. You told yourself they were just stressed. You told yourself you were too sensitive. You told yourself no relationship is perfect. Every time something didn't feel right, you found a reason to explain it away. Because the alternative, that the person you loved was harming you, was too painful to face. That's what denial really is. It's not ignorance. It's protection. It's your mind shielding you from a truth too devastating to hold. You needed to believe in the illusion because the reality would have broken you. But denial has a shelf life. There comes a point when the cracks grow too wide, when the excuses stop working, when the pain of holding on becomes greater than the fear of letting go. That's when it happens. The collapse of denial. This collapse doesn't come gently. It feels like being torn open from the inside. Because it's not just the loss of the narcissist, it's the loss of the story you built around them. The story that said, if you just gave enough, forgave enough, loved enough, you could finally make it work. Cognitive dissonance plays a central role here. On one hand, you have the moments of tenderness, the words of love, the times they seemed so genuine. On the other hand, you have the lies, the coldness, the manipulation. Your mind struggles to hold both realities, so it swings back and forth. Maybe it wasn't so bad. Maybe I misunderstood. Maybe it's my fault. That's why leaving feels impossible. It's not just about walking away from a person. It's about walking away from the hope that the person you thought they were will finally show up. Trauma bonding makes this even harder. In cycles of abuse, moments of cruelty are often followed by moments of affection. The tension, the fear, the heartbreak, all temporarily soothed when they throw you crumbs of love again. This intermittent reinforcement creates the same psychological effect as addiction. You cling to those rare moments of kindness, convincing yourself they mean the good side is real. But here's the truth. Once awareness cracks open, it cannot be reversed. Once you see the pattern clearly, the denial begins to crumble, and with it, the bond weakens. This collapse is both painful and liberating. Painful because it leaves you raw, stripped of the illusions you once clung to. Liberating because it ends the cycle of self-gaslighting. You no longer have to twist yourself into knots to justify the unjustifiable. You no longer have to betray your own instincts to preserve the illusion of love. For the empath, this is a turning point. The collapse of denial is the moment the inner war shifts. Instead of fighting to preserve the narcissist's mask, you begin to fight for your own reality. Of course, it doesn't happen overnight. You will still second-guess yourself. You will still feel the pull of the trauma bond. You will still have moments when you long for the illusion, because illusions are comforting, even when they're false. But once you've seen the truth, something inside you refuses to go back. And that's what makes this collapse cathartic. It's like a dam breaking. All the suppressed pain, all the ignored instincts, all the silenced doubts, they come rushing forward. It hurts, but it also cleanses. Because denial may have protected you, but it also imprisoned you. And now, with the collapse, you are free to face reality. Not the version the narcissist fed you, but the one your soul has been whispering all along. So if you feel broken, remember, this pain is not a sign of weakness. It is the cost of honesty. It is the price of seeing clearly. And though it may feel unbearable now, it is also the beginning of self-trust returning. You always knew. Deep down, you always knew. Now, finally, you no longer have to deny it.
How do you mourn someone who was never real? The end of a narcissistic relationship doesn't feel like an ordinary breakup. Ordinary heartbreak hurts, but at least you know what you lost. Here, the grief cuts deeper because you're not just grieving the loss of a person, you're grieving the loss of an illusion. You thought you were mourning love, but what you are really mourning is the dream of love, the version of them you built in your mind, The story you clung to, where your devotion would be enough, where your sacrifices would eventually pay off, where the good moments were proof of something lasting. When the illusion shatters, the grief that follows is overwhelming. It's not just about missing them. It's about realizing they never truly existed in the way you believed. You are left standing in the ruins of a story that once gave your life meaning. And yet, the pain is real. The tears, the emptiness, the sense of betrayal, all of it is real, even if the person you loved was not. That's why this grief feels so confusing. You can't explain it to most people. To the outside world, it may look like you're just getting over a bad relationship, but inside, it feels like mourning a death. Because in a very real way, it is. It's the death of the fantasy, the death of the version of yourself who believed in it, the death of years spent trying to make it work. This grief is layered. There's anger at them for deceiving you. There's anger at yourself for staying so long. There's sadness for the time you can't get back, the energy you'll never recover. There's loneliness too, because few people truly understand the unique devastation of narcissistic abuse. It leaves you feeling hollow, not only because you've lost them, but because you've lost yourself somewhere in the process. Psychologists compare this kind of grief to disenfranchised grief, grief that society doesn't fully recognize. When someone dies, people rally around you, they bring support, they acknowledge your pain. But when you lose someone who is toxic, the world often expects you to be relieved, even grateful. They don't see the mourning that comes after. They don't see the nights when you ache for the person you thought they were, even though you know that version was never real. The danger here is shame. You might ask yourself, how can I miss someone who hurt me? How can I still long for what I know was an illusion? But grief doesn't follow logic. It follows the heart. You are not just mourning the narcissist. You are mourning the parts of yourself you abandoned to keep them. You are mourning the years when you silenced your needs, dimmed your light, and lost sight of your own worth. That's why this stage is so important. If you skip the grief, you risk carrying the wound forward, repeating the cycle again. But if you allow yourself to mourn, truly mourn, you create space for healing. So let yourself cry. Let yourself rage. Let yourself feel the hollowness. Give yourself permission to say, I lost something important. Even if it wasn't real, it mattered to me. And it's okay to grieve it. Grief doesn't mean weakness. It doesn't mean you still want them back. It means you are human, and you invested your heart in a story that ended in betrayal. To deny the grief would be to deny the depth of your love. Over time, the grief shifts. At first, it's raw and consuming. Then it becomes quieter, more reflective. You begin to see that what you were mourning wasn't just the narcissist. It was the part of yourself that longed so desperately for love that you ignored the warning signs. And slowly, through grief, you begin to reclaim that part of yourself. You begin to see that the love you gave was real, even if they couldn't return it. You begin to understand that your grief is proof of your capacity to feel deeply, and that is not something to be ashamed of. So when you find yourself aching, remember this. You are not grieving them. You are grieving the dream you carried. And once the grief has run its course, that dream will no longer bind you. You will be free to build something real, starting with yourself.
Research shows that survivors of narcissistic abuse can take years to fully trust themselves again. That statistic may sound shocking, but if you've lived it, you know it's true. Because when you've been deceived so deeply, when your reality has been twisted against you for so long, the hardest person to trust afterward isn't other people, it's yourself. This is the battle within, the war that continues long after the narcissist is gone. On the surface, you may be free, but inside the echoes remain. The shame, the doubt, the fear that you'll make the same mistake again. The questions haunt you. What if I can't trust my judgment? What if I fall into the same trap? What if something in me is broken beyond repair? This inner war is one of the cruelest legacies of narcissistic abuse. Because the narcissist not only violated your trust in them, they eroded your trust in yourself. Every time they dismissed your feelings, every time they denied your reality, every time they told you that you were too sensitive or imagining things, they were training you to doubt your own perceptions. Over time, this doubt becomes internalized. Even when they're gone, the voice remains. It's not their voice anymore, it's yours, echoing inside your own mind, questioning, second-guessing, diminishing. Psychologists call this self-gaslighting. It's when the abuse continues inside you because you've learned to carry their distortions as your own. This is why healing feels so difficult. It's not just about recovering from what they did. It's about untangling what you came to believe about yourself in the process. The nervous system also plays a role. Trauma rewires the body for survival. You may find yourself hypervigilant, scanning for danger in every interaction. You may struggle with dissociation, shutting down emotionally when situations feel overwhelming. You may notice patterns of people-pleasing, apologizing too quickly, or sacrificing your needs just to avoid conflict. These are not signs of weakness. They are survival strategies, ways your body and mind adapted to keep you safe in an unsafe relationship. But once the threat is gone, those same strategies can keep you trapped, making it hard to feel whole again. The battle within is fought on many fronts. Shame whispers that you should have known better. Fear insists that everyone will hurt you. Anger rises at unexpected moments, sometimes at them, sometimes at yourself. And beneath it all is exhaustion, the sense that no matter what you do, you may never feel like yourself again. But here's the truth. This battle is not proof of your brokenness, it's proof of your survival. The very fact that you're wrestling with these questions means you are awake, aware, and refusing to live in denial anymore. Healing begins with reframing. Instead of asking, "What's wrong with me?" you begin to ask, "What happened to me?" Instead of blaming yourself for the scars, you start to see them as evidence of the war you endured. Yes, it takes time to rebuild trust in yourself. Yes, it takes time to calm a nervous system that has been on high alert for years. But every step you take towards self-compassion weakens the hold of shame. Every time you choose to validate your own feelings instead of dismissing them, you reclaim a piece of yourself that was stolen. The inner war may feel endless, but like any battle, it shifts with persistence. There will be setbacks, moments when old fears resurface, when self-doubt returns. But there will also be breakthroughs, moments when you speak your truth without apology, when you set a boundary without guilt, when you feel your own strength returning. And those moments matter because they prove that healing is not about erasing the past, it's about integrating it, taking the lessons, reclaiming the parts of yourself that were buried, and building a foundation of trust that no one can take away. So if you feel like you're still fighting long after the relationship has ended, know this: you are not failing, you are healing. The battle within is not a sign of weakness, it's the pathway to becoming whole again.
The wound is not the end of you. It's the beginning of who you really are. After enduring the betrayal, grief, and inner battles, the empath begins to glimpse a new horizon. Individuation, the process described by Carl Jung, is the reclamation of self. It is the conscious integration of all parts of your psyche, the acknowledgement of your shadow, and the reclamation of your projections. For the empath, this is the point where the pain transforms into a tool for self-discovery. Every boundary you begin to set, every moment you say no without guilt, every instance of self-validation is a brick in rebuilding your identity. The empath learns to distinguish between their own emotions and the residues of manipulation that once clouded their judgment. This stage is not instantaneous. It is a gradual unfolding, a layered reconstruction of the self. You revisit memories that once hurt you and view them through a lens of clarity rather than shame. You recognize patterns, acknowledge the ways in which you unconsciously sought approval, and begin to gently redirect those impulses towards self-care. Psychologically, this is profound. Individuation requires both courage and patience. It asks the empath to face the parts of themselves they abandoned, the assertive, angry, protective, and even selfish aspects that were suppressed to maintain harmony in a toxic dynamic. In reclaiming these pieces, the empath discovers their true depth and resilience. Journaling, therapy, self-reflection, and shadow work become essential tools. Writing down experiences allows the mind to process events objectively, removing lingering distortions. Therapy offers a guided framework to confront internalized trauma safely. Shadow work, confronting hidden or suppressed parts of the psyche, illuminates unconscious drives and helps integrate them into conscious awareness. The empath also learns to observe without attachment. They recognize triggers, understand their boundaries, and respond consciously instead of reactively. In this way, every interaction becomes an opportunity for growth, not a potential threat to their emotional well-being. Healing practices are not just about managing pain, they are about actively cultivating authenticity. Meditation, reflective solitude, and mindfulness allow the empath to reconnect with their intuition and inner voice. These practices help differentiate genuine connection from the mirroring they once mistook for love. Another crucial aspect is forgiveness, not for the narcissist, but for oneself. Empaths often carry self-blame for falling into manipulation, for not recognizing the warning signs sooner, or for giving too much. Individuation invites compassion toward your own vulnerabilities. You were doing the best you could with the awareness you had at the time. As this process unfolds, the empath begins to feel a sense of ownership over their life that was previously impossible. Choices are no longer dictated by fear, approval-seeking, or unconscious patterns. Instead, decisions are guided by clarity, integrity, and the lessons learned from trauma. Empowerment is also relational. As the empath strengthens, they naturally attract healthier connections. They no longer tolerate manipulation or deceit. They cultivate relationships based on reciprocity, respect, and mutual understanding. The inner compass, once clouded, becomes reliable, leading them toward connections that nurture rather than diminish. This is the essence of individuation, emerging from the shadow of abuse with a stronger, more integrated self. It's a journey from fragmentation to wholeness, from self-doubt to self-assurance. Each step, each insight, each boundary is a victory in reclaiming personal sovereignty. And while the scars remain, they serve as proof of endurance rather than weakness. The empath who once doubted their worth now stands as a testament to resilience. The pain that once threatened to define them becomes a source of wisdom, strength, and authenticity. Ultimately, this stage is about transformation. The empath is no longer a passive participant in their emotional life. They are the architect of their inner world, the guardian of their boundaries, and the nurturer of their own growth. The journey through abuse was not in vain. It was the crucible that forged a deeper, truer self. Every choice made in conscious awareness, every act of self-respect, every affirmation of one's own reality is proof that healing is possible. And as the empath continues this journey, they move closer to the final stage, the emergence of a new self, unbound by past illusions and fully aligned with their authentic identity. One day, you will look back and realize the narcissist was the fire that forged you. The journey through betrayal, grief, and inner turmoil culminates in a moment of quiet power. The empath, once lost in manipulation and self-doubt, emerges transformed. Pain has been transmuted into wisdom, struggle into resilience, and confusion into clarity. This is not the end of the story. It is the emergence of a self that is stronger, freer, and unafraid to exist authentically in the world. Now the empath recognizes that every moment of suffering was a teacher. The narcissist's deception, once devastating, becomes a mirror reflecting what was previously hidden, the unacknowledged strength, the boundaries that needed reinforcement, the aspects of self that had been surrendered in search of external validation. Each scar is a marker of survival and growth, a testament to endurance and self-reclamation. Psychologically, this stage represents full integration. The empath has reclaimed projections, embraced their shadow, and reinforced their boundaries. The inner dialogue shifts from self-blame to self-respect. No longer driven by the fear of manipulation, the empath exercises choice consciously, discerning truth from illusion with clarity born from experience. Relationships, once fraught with imbalance, now reflect the empath's evolved standards. Connections are no longer rooted in neediness or unconscious codependency. Instead, they are cultivated through mutual respect, authenticity, and emotional reciprocity. The empath understands that love cannot be extracted from someone incapable of giving it, and in this understanding lies liberation. Emotionally, the transformation is profound. Fear, shame, and self-doubt lose their grip. What once felt like a void is now filled with self-trust, resilience, and the quiet confidence of knowing one's worth. The empath has become the observer and the architect of their emotional landscape, responding to life with intention rather than reaction. There is also a spiritual or existential dimension to this emergence. Pain is no longer meaningless. It is part of a narrative of individuation, the forging of character through trial. The empath experiences a sense of wholeness, as if the trials endured were necessary steps in shaping the person they were always meant to become. This stage invites a redefinition of power. True power is no longer domination over others, but sovereignty over one's own mind and emotions. The empath has learned that resilience is not about hardness, but about the capacity to feel deeply, recover fully, and act from a place of self-knowledge. Even in moments of reflection on the past, there is no bitterness. The narcissist, the manipulation, the illusions, all of it becomes part of a narrative of growth rather than victimhood. The empath can look back with clarity, understanding that the trauma was a catalyst for awakening, not a sentence to remain broken. Ultimately, the new self is a synthesis of all experiences. Strength coexists with sensitivity, wisdom with empathy, and independence with connection. The empath moves through life with a quiet authority, grounded in the knowledge that they survived the fire of manipulation and emerged forged, unshakable, and free. In this state, the empath's presence radiates clarity and calm. They no longer seek external validation to confirm worth. Instead, their actions, boundaries, and choices reflect an inner alignment that is self-sustaining. The world may test them, but the internal foundation is unbreakable. The final realization is simple, yet profound. The narcissist's deception did not diminish them. Instead, it revealed the depth of their resilience and catalyzed the journey toward authenticity. The empath has transformed suffering into insight, grief into growth, and betrayal into self-mastery. And so the journey closes not with despair, but with emergence. The empath stands fully integrated, fully alive, and fully themselves, proof that the darkest experiences can give rise to the brightest truths. The fire that once threatened to consume them has instead become the forge that revealed their true form.